Coming live from the Fly Studio in Commerce Township, it's the Fulfilling Life's Yearnings podcast! And I'm your host, Blake Giovanni Thomas Soulet. And if you're ready to be your best by writing the script of your life to whatever you want it to be and taking action on your dreams, then this is the podcast for you. It's time to enter the fly zone. What's up, everybody? It's the fly host you love the most, and I'm back with another episode of Fulfilling Life's Yearnings. Guys, I am phenomenally fly today to share this incredible story I have for you today with this awesome guest. Today's guest is a national youth speaker, youth minister, rapper, and spoken word poet from Metro Detroit, who travels across the country to schools, churches, colleges, and youth groups, spreading a passionate message of peace, love, equality, tolerance, kindness, and understanding. Also, a lot more great stuff on here, but I will let him touch on that. Today's guest is Kevin Szawala, aka Mr. Peace. And Mr. Peace, so glad to have you on with me today. How are you doing?
Hey, how's it going? I'm doing very well, very blessed.
Dude, I'm so glad to have you on. I was just thinking earlier, when I first met you at Reaching Higher, which I'm actually volunteering in again right now, over at the Milford High School. So we have 2 more sessions left for that.
Okay.
And obviously I always wanted to get you on back then too, and then through whatever reason just didn't work out. But I'm glad to have you here today.
For sure.
Just really excited to dive into this conversation. And just for starters, I'm just gonna keep calling you Mr. Peace because I just love the ring of that.
All right, no worries.
What is your journey? I know I talked about those great things that you're doing, but like, how did you get to this position where you are today?
Right. Well, it's been a crazy journey. It kind of, I guess for me, I've always been very driven, very on fire to always give 110% to whatever I do. But it wasn't really until my senior year of college at U of M in Ann Arbor that I started finally following my own dreams and, what I really wanted to do with my life. I was kind of following others' dreams for me up until my senior year of college. And I had this big wake up moment. I went to a workshop called Challenge Day, and it was a 3-day workshop where you got real, with 50 strangers, people that I didn't even know. And this was down in Toledo, Ohio, 25 men, 25 women. And, I got closer to these 50 strangers than I was with my own family, because we got so real and we lowered our water lines and just really got very vulnerable with each other, that we kind of became family. But we also started saying, what do you really want to do? And I remember 2 of the facilitators, I told them, I said, I want to be a speaker, and a true leader. And they said, well, you're already the speaker that you want to be. And it was like, all I needed was one person telling me that and believe it in me. And I was off and running. And so I finally started doing things that made me come alive and following my purpose. And I went back to my old high school, South Lyon, Michigan. And I started talking to each class because I was so on fire, and my sister was still there. And I said, hey, can I come speak to your class? And she's like, yeah. And then every teacher heard about it, and they wanted me to come talk to their class about things I wish I knew back then that I knew now. And then I started speaking to pretty much every class in the school. I did a full school assembly. Other schools started hearing about me, and I had always loved speech class, and that was just kind of on my heart. So I wanted a way to connect to people. And now it's through that. It's through my heart. It's through humor, and now through music too. And so it's just been like a roller coaster ride where you meet this person, you get this opportunity, you keep honing the website and honing the message, and you keep building and growing, and it's just awesome. For how much you give, you just receive that much more. And out of college, because I couldn't really do this full time yet financially, I ended up going into the auto industry, and I went to college for economics. I got my MBA from Wayne State University in Detroit, but my heart wasn't really there. Like, you can't put a price tag on passion. And so I ended up leaving in 2010 to go after this full time. And I haven't really looked back since. It's just been a amazing journey. I've done some youth ministry on the side too at a couple churches in the area, but on my off days, my off weeks, I travel the country and get to share my heart and hopefully bring some healing to hearts that need it.
See, to me, that is just so incredible, because I see you as someone who is fulfilling his life's yearnings, and just going back to that moment where you went to the retreat over in Ohio, and then you came back to start speaking over at your high school. Just talk about like what that experience is like for anyone who is saying, "Gosh, I want to be a speaker too," right? But I don't know what to say, what to talk about. I feel like I'm gonna get up in front of the audience and just like completely blank. Where were you drawing like your source of inspiration and like your preparation to even do something like that?
All of us have a story, right? And I think the greatest tragedy, like my speaking mentor, Jim Tuman, here in Michigan also has always talked about, is that the greatest human tragedy is to die with the music still within you. And I just, had this fire. I didn't necessarily know where it was going to go, but I knew that I wanted to inspire others. And it was like the first time in my life where I really started feeling fulfilled. And I just remember coming back from that workshop and just thinking to myself, like, I'm finally doing things with my life, not maybe, what I want to do yet, but I'm being who I want to be for this planet and for this world and my community. And that's the biggest thing that I could just focus on, is having this heart to help others. I knew that my heart was for the youth, that it, really truly bleeds for them. And I wanted to do something to help them and, just to empower them. But now it's turned into something bigger than that. I do a lot of suicide prevention and anti-bullying, and you kind of go like where the issues are and where the need is. And I reached a point too that, I would get very, very nervous at first, but you reach a point where, what you have to say needs to be said, needs to be heard. And you go with that motivation that what you're saying or sharing that day in an auditorium of 2,000 or a gym of 3,000 students, that somebody there has to hear that, and that they're going to be open to receive that message, and you might even save a life.
No, I love hearing that. And I remember when we were talking, just over the summer when we lost a loved one, Shelby Seaburn, and just what you said to me in that moment was like, we got to do this. This is, the time for people to, really live in their purpose and do those things that light them up. And like from there, at that time, I really hadn't been doing the podcast as much, just because I just, for whatever reason, I just couldn't find myself back to it. But then like talking with you and then seeing, like, you're right, this is the time to do that, because you just never know what's going to happen. And I want to be able to make sure that at least I can control my circle of influence and continue to push out, what I'm doing with the Fulfilling Life's Yearnings videos that I'm doing every day for Instagram, or even having these candid interviews with incredible people like you who have a message to share. Going off of that, for you getting into this space as this speaker, and you're going to these different events, what for you has been the process in you like establishing like what your voice is and like your true authentic self? Like, how did you come to that point where you're like, like for me at the beginning, I was kind of like unsure like what my voice was and tried different ways to like get to me. Like, what did you do for that process and work?
Well, I guess like the best advice that I had received in terms of, how do these kids relate to you? How do you relate to somebody when you're the only Caucasian, in an entirely Hispanic school or African American school, or, in schools that are really high in crime or just, high in violence. How do you relate to someone that is in so much pain? But it comes down to you yourself getting as vulnerable as possible. And I guess when I look at it, that people don't care, what you have to say until they know how much you care. So from the gates, I mean, these students, they know instantly that I have something vested in who they are. And maybe I haven't gone through the same storm that they've gone through, but I have gone through my physical challenges and financial and emotional and mental, and I share that. I mean, I get very real with them, that I went through battling hepatitis C for a year in 2010, and I lost 50 pounds in a month, and I was in and out of ER, and it was my hardest year physically on this planet, spiritually, and the list goes on. I went through a series of 4 deaths right before that happened, where I was at these funerals of people that I think died at too young of an age, some to drug overdoses, some to drunk driving incidents. And then after that, post that, I had lost 4 more, 2 uncles and 2 grandparents, all within the same calendar year. And my heart was ready to explode, and I became numb, and I stopped kind of caring, how I treated people. I stopped caring about a lot of things. But, going back to what you said about Shelby, and this new round of, I guess, this new series of deaths that came up to me in 2017, it wasn't just her. I also lost a friend of mine, Egypt Covington, and people that are from Southeast Michigan and have been down 275 or I-94 will see the billboards that she was murdered in her home back in June, shot, and they still haven't found out who did it. So they're still trying to seek justice for her. But I lost a friend of mine, Irene Kopko, 103 years old, Memorial Day weekend. And right before her, my wife's Aunt Linda, who was 70. And within 24 hours, I lost my Uncle JC, and he was 81. But, it was kind of different, this series of deaths, and why I'm bringing those up and the ones from 2010 is that I finally woke up. And this was after everything culminated that year in 2010. I had this epiphany moment. I was held up at gunpoint. My cousin and I in Ypsilanti, Michigan, outside my apartment, and we had 2 pistols cocked at our stomachs and told to empty our pockets by guys in hoods and masks. And she was pregnant. And it was a moment that flashes before your eyes. And I started finally in this instance, just finally kind of waking up and saying, what do I really appreciate? What's really important? Where am I going in my life? But also finally understood the best way to honor these people's legacy that have gone before us and to make sure that they didn't die in vain is by how we choose to live today, by how we choose to treat others, that no matter how full our heart gets of pain or hurt or loss, we can still choose love. And we can still choose to honor who they were, that they still live on in our hearts and through our words, that they really aren't gone. In fact, I believe that they're even closer, because now there's no more pain and suffering from my beliefs, and they can be even closer and give that unconditional love to us in that spiritual world too. And so that's kind of where I'm at. That finding my voice, it started with me getting real, but really in terms of me actually being able to share the realities of my life, that I'm human and I go through pain, but that's what unites us. And we have billions of nerve endings in our body, so we will feel pain at some point in our life. But again, we always have that choice how we're going to respond to it.
Yeah, that is so deep, and I so much resonate with that. So thank you so much for sharing.
Sure thing.
Just that part and giving more context to, what makes you up. And also wanted to talk about, I know you're also the founder of, being who I want to be, which I feel ties into that. How did that come about, and where do you find the biggest impact? Is it just in the schools that you're working with for students, or are you also, tying this into people in the community who also want to, find and live in their soul purpose?
Yeah, sure. I mean, you mentioned helping out with the class there at Milford with the Reaching Higher, and that's 8 weeks where you build these students up beyond belief, right? Give them self-esteem, confidence, public speaking skills, life skills, and you have a huge impact over this 8 weeks, right? Maybe a bigger impact than I have initially when I first, speak to a school of 1,000 students, right? But what I feel I'm doing, is I'm kind of sparking their hearts. I'm like starting to spark the change. I'm starting to get the ball rolling and the wheels turning, and, them thinking about, where they're at. And if you can already start thinking at 12, 13, 14 years old, what do I really want to do with my life, or what angers me, like what injustice out there do I want to solve? Maybe that's where you're being called. But I also focused on that being who I want to be. When I first started that LLC back in 2009, it was to help at-risk youth, but more from the perspective of focusing on who you want to be for this earth. And that by doing that, that's how we're going to solve issues, right? If we fill the spots and the jobs and the careers and the needs based on where our passions lie about who we want to be and who we want to be remembered for, then we start solving these world's problems a lot faster, right? Because if you're just doing it for the money, money buys temporary happiness, but there'll never be enough of it to be completely happy. And it's got to be part of the motivation, because you got to live, you got to pay bills. And it's a great thing that can bring a lot of joy to people's hearts, and can bring a lot of relief, to disaster areas too. So I don't deny its purpose, but the love for it, like 1 Timothy says in the Bible, right? It's not greed itself that's the root of all evil. It's the love for it. And if that starts to be your only motivation, then, you'll never be completely happy. And so I'm really happy to announce, though, that even since I filled out your online form with my bio background, I've since become a 501c3 nonprofit.
Congratulations.
Mr. Peace Inc.
Nice.
Mr. Peace Incorporated. So it's pretty sweet. Yeah, it was about 6 months in the making, and so I've kind of taken the next step to become a nonprofit. And the goal there is to start applying to certain grant opportunities to help with child welfare and suicide prevention, and be able to go into these schools potentially free of charge. That I have the sponsorship or the financial backing of certain institutions that can say, hey, go and speak for a month out in South Dakota or down in Arizona, and, bring some healing to these communities. And that's what I'm really trying to do now, because the reality is, unfortunately, schools sometimes have no budget or limited budget, and I don't try to break the bank when I go out and speak anywhere. I just, obviously have to make a living too, but, the biggest thing is I want to share my heart. So I always work within the budget for sure, because it's a priority to get this healing message heard.
Yeah, that is incredible. That is just so needed, and it just goes to attest to the work that you put in, and how much this means to you to continue to serve and go to these schools. And before we actually transition into talking about suicide prevention and also the anti-bullying and diversity, what is the the lifestyle like for you, as far as like how do you set your day up or even your week to do these talks, or even like your other works that you're involved with, and just how do you manage to get it all in?
It's crazy. I tell people, and obviously being a youth pastor, St. Mary's Church here in Milford, Michigan, coffee and Christ. That's how I do it. But no, really it's a lot of planning. It's kind of working, two jobs right now, because my off days, my off weeks that I get to take to go speak and share my heart, there's a lot of background planning that happens with that. I have a few companies that book me, Mobile Ed Productions out of Redford, Michigan, and Catholic Media Group out of Cincinnati, Ohio. And so, then I also book myself, but I mean, it's kind of chaotic because, people think, well, yeah, you're just going to go speak at the school, but the 10 conversations back and forth with the school counselor or the principal to set things up to make sure you have the right time and all the details ironed out. And then you got to sometimes book a hotel or book a plane, or, you got to change things, things happen, snow days, whatever it is. So a lot of these bookings, they'll be almost a year in advance, and you're already getting your schedule laid out well in advance. So I guess time management's key, because I have to, plan my youth ministry calendar around going and speaking out in Pennsylvania or out east for a week, or out in Milwaukee, or down in Texas where I'm heading next week, Houston, Dallas, and Austin area, to bring some more healing down there. And I'll be out west again in March, and then up towards Oregon in May. So it's just kind of like, I'm in 15 states this school year alone, and I've now been in 20 states since 2006, like the last 10 years. And I've talked to close to 1 million youth and over 1,000 schools. So it's been really humbling. And again, I'm beyond blessed to be able to even do this and have the opportunity that I do. But, the tears that come after I talk, and the kids come up to you and say that, you saved my life, and if you weren't here today, I wouldn't be here tomorrow. Those conversations are happening more and more often, and tears are strength. They're the sweat of our strength, and the start of healing and feeling again. And I don't want to say that I'm just brought into schools to make kids cry, but it's kind of the reality of, what I do. But that's, I guess, that's the fuel to my fire and the motivation. And going back to those series of deaths that I've had in my life too, and that you've had, you can either become something that keeps us down, or something that is just more motivation for what we do and why we have to do it today, and take the steps every day to keep going towards our purpose and feel fulfilled, because we don't know. There's no guarantees, right? And we don't know when our last breath's going to be, and we got to take advantage of that.
So true. And just talk about, just for a minute as well, like, what has it been like in being able to, get in the right environment to surround yourself with people who are uplifting and encouraging you and want to see you fulfill your soul purpose? Was that a challenge, or were you able to easily kind of, navigate your way through those different moments of doubters, but also being able to tune them out and find those core group of people for you?
Wow. Yeah, that's a good question. It was one of the hardest things I've had to do in my life when I left Federal Mogul, the auto supplier here in Michigan, and they're all over the world too. But it was 2010, and I was really contemplating. I had gotten past my treatment. I had come out successful with hepatitis, and it's still almost a decade later, non-traceable in my body. And I tell people I was healed physically, but even more importantly, I was healed in my heart. But I remember I just finished my MBA, and I had some money saved up, and I was at this point, like, I got to try this now. I didn't really have any financial obligations. I didn't have a family yet. And I was just thinking, I said, I got to try this, because even if I fail, I got something to fall back on. And I got, I'm still young enough to make the mistake and not have it be as hard to pick back up where I was. But I tell you, man, I was with my friend Dave at a place in Ann Arbor, like a restaurant. And I remember, like, the week before I was about to tell them that I was going to be leaving, he's like, this is the hardest thing that you're going to have to do in your life. And I was like, yeah, I know. And he said it again and again and again. And I'm like, okay, like, I get it. But it was because I was leaving a full-time job. I was leaving benefits. I was climbing the corporate ladder. I was making a lot of money. Cushy lifestyle. Things were looking great. And now all of a sudden I just jumped ship, this leap of faith where I just left everything and went after my dream and my calling, and took a huge pay cut at first. That was tough. And I had people, people that I cared about the most that said, how are you going to support yourself? How are you going to do this? How are you going to do that? Like 21 questions. And I said, I don't know, but I know that when I'm doing this, every fiber of my being is 110% alive. I'm on fire for life. And I said, I will make it work, like I'm that on fire for it. And I have. And I struggled financially at first. And over the years, I've had haters and people drinking haterade instead of that Powerade. No, but just people that say, like what you do is whack and, why are you doing this? And you get people that post on your YouTube videos or send you Facebook messages or have hate. And I tell youth, it doesn't really faze me anymore because there's a lot of opinions out there and not all of them matter. And what matters is that you know your own worth and your own value and your own skill set, and you focus on your own gifts, right? Because comparison is the quickest road to unhappiness. And I don't try to do that anymore. I just know that this is what I have. I have the effort, not the outcome. I believe that's up to God. And, we can love, only He can change. And that's kind of what I focus on, every day, just doing my best, and then I rest.
I love all of the things that you were just saying. And after you said that last one, I was like, yeah, compare is to despair. So yeah, I'm right on with that as well. And thank goodness you were able to tune out all of that stuff, because what I was talking about the other day on for one of my videos was that since you were feeling like this sole purpose, and even for me or for anyone else that's listening in, it's like so selfish for you not to express and to share your voice and to do those things that Mr. Peace is saying that light up every single fiber of his being. Because if he wasn't doing what he was doing, then how would those kids that the schools are bringing in to have them cry, have their aha moment to realize I am worth it and I don't want to go through with, committing suicide or harming myself or not believing that I can accomplish anything. So that goes true for Mr. Peace, for me, for you listening in. Like it's so important that like you taking everything that he was just saying there, like everyone has a opinion, but not all of them matter. And like for me, what I say is, framing your mind, taking the stuff that is helpful for you. You don't want the FUD to want to throw out, fear and uncertainty and doubt, because those things aren't gonna help you, fulfill your life's yearnings. And off of that, Mr. Peace, just talk about, your programs, because you said that, it's all about, you can do the effort. It's not about the outcome. God controls that outcome. Mm-hmm. What is it when you're going to a school and you're doing the suicide prevention? Like what is it that you're saying to the students that gets them to have these epiphanies, or even to realize that they deserve to live? And how does that, for even someone who's listening in who wants to bring in a speaker, what are the things that the schools that are bringing you in are pointing out as like, yeah, this is what we want you to get across, and we know that this was valuable for us to bring you in?
Yeah, all good questions. I guess, I get brought into schools. Sometimes it's prevention related. So whether that's bullying or suicide or self-harm or race issues, diversity, violence, right? And then on the other side of things, I'm brought in to help heal. So if unfortunately, someone did take his life, or weapons were brought to school, or whatever the issue is. But to me, and what I share, that these are the symptoms of deeper issues going on. Those are the byproducts, right, of people that are in pain, people that are alone, people with no purpose, people with voids. I mean, if I'm talking at a faith-based school, it's people with no faith, and so you gotta address the root issues first, right? If you're even gonna try to help with the other issues, because otherwise you're just putting a Band-Aid on it, and it's gonna just keep happening. And so some of the things that they respond to are just stories and testimonials that I end up reading of kids their age. And this goes from kindergarten up to 12th grade. I got kids in 3rd grade that had one kid, that came up to me and pulled something out of his pocket after my talk. And it was a note, and it said, "I'm a mistake." And this is a third grader, and I had another third grader come up and say, like, "What makes you happy? Mr. Peace, what makes you happy?" And I said, going after my dreams and, doing this every day. And she's like, "Well, because I haven't been happy for a long time." And this is a third grader. But yet, on the flip side of this, after my presentations, they realize they don't have to stay in that unhappiness or choose that label that somebody gave them and believe that lie. The student I spoke to, the other third grader named Dylan, he said, "I want to choose that I'm a miracle." And this from the Reaching Higher classes, but every one of us on the palm of our hands with the lines of our hand have the letter M etched on our palms, right? And I always jokingly say that it stands for Michigan, especially when I'm down in Ohio. And I got kicked out of Columbus once for saying that. No, I'm joking. But no, but it stands for miracle, and upside down, it stands for worthy. And for these kids to see that, like at a young age, it's huge. And I remember him saying, "I don't want to believe that I'm a mistake anymore. I want to believe that I'm a miracle." And this girl, Natalia, that said that she's not happy, she came up to me afterwards and she wrote something down. She said, "Don't let the world change your smile. Let your smile change the world." And it's like, and when like a 10th grader hears this, or whoever hears this, or like I share, one student that drew me a picture of the miracle and like on his hand and the peace sign. And he said, "Thank you, Mr. Peace, for giving me something that I've been searching forever to find, a reason to stay." And this is a 10th grader. His name was Danny. But when other students see that, like their hearts just become open. I pick about 10 or 12 bracelets before every talk, and I have thousands of these, but every one that I've been given was from a student that said, "If you weren't here today, that I wouldn't be here tomorrow." And so when they start seeing these things and that like the reality is there and like things are real, and oh my gosh, like I'm going through that same thing, and some kid in Connecticut or in Wisconsin or California is going through the same thing, and I'm here in Indiana, like I can relate to that and I can buy into this because I've never been called a miracle. I've never been told this. And for people to believe that, it's huge. And unfortunately, when they get called this, called that, it's not like food poisoning where your body rejects it, right? Mm-hmm. It's something that if you're told this, many times your heart and mind don't know the difference. Whatever you tell it, it's going to believe. And so you have to be able to say, no, like that's not the truth. And like going back to the last question you had is, be around people that are going to build you up and not tear you down. And that your true best friends are the ones that are really worth your time and are going to respect you no matter what.
Right. Like I heard a quote the other day that said, the most contagious thing in the world is a negative attitude. And
that's true.
And for those kids that you have that privileged opportunity to speak with, what is it that you share with them for now once now their heart is open and they do see that they're worthy and that they can live for a passion and a purpose? Like, what are those next steps that you start sharing with them to move forward
right.
with their life and to continue to grow?
Yeah. I mean, it's something that, me coming that 1 hour mm-hmm. isn't going to be a cure-all, right? And it's mm-hmm. not going to fix things forever. What it is going to fix is hopefully their angle of vision, like how they approach things. But, for example, I've had kids that reach out to me, send me a DM on Instagram or send me an email, and they say, well, 2 weeks later, I'm still getting bullied. And I was brought in for the bullying. I said, look, the bullying might change or might continue, but how you approach it, your response is what's different. I had a 7th grader that emailed me named John, said he got tripped in the hallway by this bully 2 weeks after I spoke. And he stood right back up, walked over to the bully, shook his hand, smiled, and said, "Have a great day." Mm. And the bully's mouth, like while he's shaking his hand, dropped. and everybody watching, like their mouths dropped because they expected him to run away or cry or fight back and fail. And he did the exact opposite, the thing that this person needed the most. He showed him love, despite all this hate that, the hate that he was shown. And so for us to actually, have that courage, to respond in that way, he got his power back from the bully and took away the power, his power over him. Right. But he also found out the next day that he had two parents who were alcoholics and abusive. And that's why he was just basically reflecting what he was taught. And I tell people, like, I don't come to talks trying to pretend that I know what goes on behind closed doors, because I don't. I come with an open heart trying to touch a small piece of theirs. And that's a big thing that I really reinforce with them is the heart element, that they've been hurt, right? And that's why they're self-harming themselves or others. And so they don't want to keep their heart open again. They don't want to get hurt again, right? And the tendency is that if you feel alone, you feel threatened. And if you feel threatened, you want to be more alone. And it's a vicious cycle. But I tell them, you never have to go it alone. I mean, from the faith side of things, our Savior needed help carrying his cross, right? So what does it tell us about us? That we need him, that we need others. But they never have to go it alone, that whether it's me believing in them and being in their corner. And I tell them, if they reach out to me, I don't always get back to them right away, but I always get back to them. That's my promise. And I also tell them I don't have all the answers, but he does. And he speaks through me. And, I share what's on my heart, and I try to reflect what they already know, that they're beautiful and that they're miracles. And sometimes just got to be reminded of that. And if they are suicidal to that point, it's not going to be overnight fix. I got people, friends in their 40s, that still revisit those thoughts, but they know their power over those fears, and they know who to go to, who to confide in, what to do in those instances, that if it comes back and they will come back, that you can hopefully respond to it with a whole different mindset and a different approach, and be more apt to reach out for help when you need it.
But I love that you said that too. To preface the answer, that hour you spend with them isn't the cure all. But what I look at what you're doing, right, is you're going in there and installing a new, framework for them to now look at the world differently that they're in. Like you said, with the kid who was tripped by the bully, and he goes up and shakes his hand and tells him to have a good day, thanks, whatever. And like now they have these situations. You've put within them this incredible transformative framework on how to look at things and not to react, but instead to give those people what they're lacking most. Because like you say, hurt people,
right?
Because they haven't got that love. So to me, that's just so incredible. And you're right, it's not gonna have those immediate effects right then, and which is why even after you speak or anyone speaks, like, we need to always continue to work on ourselves and to,
for sure,
and do these things. You're gonna wake up and brush your teeth every day. You don't just wake up, brush it at the beginning of the year and never do it again. That's just not gonna be good for anyone. And that's the same for this. And always reminding yourself of these things, that self-talk. What are you saying to yourself? Like for me, every morning when I get up, I call it my fly ritual. I do the same stuff every morning, get up, do my chants, my incantations, my positive words, say them in the mirror to get myself ready and primed for the day, so I can be my best self. And that hasn't always been the case for me. I've had days before I really have embraced this lifestyle of really focusing and working on myself, where I would get up and I didn't want to get up and would just feel horrible about myself. And so doing this for me is even constant daily kaizening, that I make sure, like, it's a non-negotiable. I have to do this every single morning in order for me to be the best and that I know I'm capable of being every day.
Exactly. And I mean, it's like habits, right? I mean, it takes consciously working at something like 30 days, like to make a habit or to break one. And I guess pulling in the hip hop side of things, since I love that, And that's a big way that I relate to youth and am able to kind of share something deeper is, I gain that respect with them, with that talent, like the spoken word poetry I do too, to take the message like at a deeper level. But talking about the fly stuff, it's just like our buddy Lloyd Banks said, I'm so fly. Da-da-do-da-do. So maybe that could be the new theme song for Blake Soulet.
I love
he's
that.
So fly. Da-da-do-da-do. I did a remix to that once. I was like, I'm so full of courage in life, mixed with that discipline and self-control. But I just love music, and I love what you're doing, and I want to take a second too in the show just to honor you, for what you've been through and how you're still choosing that positivity. I think that's the examples that we need to really be showing people. And if you're having an off day, to let people know that too. I mean, to be that real with someone, it's huge. And I think that's what the schools I visit, the ones where the kids are really responding the most is where the teachers really care. And so does from the top down, principal down to the janitor, people that these kids, like, they got so much coming on their hearts, people in general. And, how are you supposed to teach them algebra when they're living with, no parents or grandparents or trying to worry about their next meal? And it's like, you got to reach them at that level first. And once you do, they're going to be more apt to buy into whatever the teaching is and whatever the life lesson is.
That's so true. And just to piggyback off of your music love and the rap, how did you get into that? What's your story for that?
Weird Al Yankovic. He was kind of the start of something that just kind of continued. I remember back in like second and third grade, like at summer daycare, we had to alternate between Ace of Base for the girls, like on a cassette tape, and then us playing Weird Al. And I basically started just writing parodies at a young age. Like, that's just all I did. I'd rewrite stuff and do my own parody, and then they were usually like more like comical and stuff. But then I started getting more into my purpose and self-growth and everything. And back in 2006, I started doing a lot of freestyling and just getting like into rap circles, rap battles, more like positive ones, not like demeaning ones, but just like other artists just going back and forth, and went to Artist Village over in Redford a lot and met some people that were in the industry kind of. And I remember I started writing a lot of poetry. And then my one friend said, hey, do you want to like make a song about this one poem you wrote? I said, yeah. And my first track took me like 8 hours because I was chopping it up, and, you got to fit the right amount of syllables, and like they call it the hood ear. So you can like what sounds good to you might not sound good to someone else. But I started to finally look and realizing, okay, here's how you get the breath flow. Here's how you get the air flow. And then I just started performing, and, I probably failed a bunch and missed up, on some lines here and there. But then, you get so good at freestyling, you just start filling in the gaps if you did forget something, and nobody would know. And then it just kind of became like this fun thing, but also just, the thing that I realized I was pretty talented at, and I could start doing as like an additive to the talks that I give at schools and, or the performances that I do. And it's starting to change hearts. So even some of the music that's really positive and uplifting, that's really helped people get through their storms too. So it's kind of been a cool tool to just be able to share that as well.
No, I love that. And you hit it right there too. And you were just talking about the failures, and even when you go through those moments, like, how do you continue to break through those, and like, how does that play a part in the message that you share with anyone?
I'd just be like our good friends Tom Brady and Matt Stafford, NFL quarterbacks. NFL quarterbacks have a short-term memory. More from the standpoint of, yes, we're going to fail.
Yep.
And that's okay. But so many kids, I always ask them, what's the opposite of failure? What's the opposite of success? And they say failure. And I say, no, it's quitting or giving up.
Mm-hmm.
Because I tell them, I said, just because you failed does not make you a failure, right? Like, you can't fail unless you quit. And I give them so many examples, like under the sun, of famous people that have failed just to finally succeed. You got Thomas Edison, took him 10,000 tries to get the light bulbs working. And his teachers were labeled as calling him too stupid to learn anything, right? Albert Einstein, his teachers called him retarded, and the guy was a pure genius. And if they really believed all this, like, they wouldn't have amounted to anything. Like, Oprah was told that she was unfit for TV, and now she's, a billionaire. I think Marilyn Monroe was told that she was unattractive, couldn't act, right? Decca Recording Studios cut the Beatles label and said guitar music is on the way out. And it was the worst decision ever, because they were the top grossing band of all time. It was ridiculous. Babe Ruth, one of the all-time leaders in home runs, but also in strikeouts, right? So you have to try. Michael Jordan missed all these game winners, buzzer beaters, said he failed over and over and over and over and over and over again to finally succeed. Just so many famous people. Maybe the biggest one I tell people, jokingly kinda, was Colonel Sanders. And I got to visit where he was buried, same cemetery, Cave Hill, over in Louisville, Kentucky, same as Muhammad Ali. But I got to go there because I was talking to some middle schools this past school year down in Louisville. And it took him 1,009 tries to get his recipe accepted. So I'll joke with the students and say, can you imagine if he stopped at 1,008, that we wouldn't have KFC? So, but it's just more fuel for our fire that, so many people have done that, but they don't believe it, it's like, that's not going to define them. And I think for me, it's been the same thing, that, like, you give a talk and like, you're just off that day. And that's the other reality. It's like, sometimes I'm dead tired giving a talk. Sometimes I got other emotional things going on in my heart when I give a talk. Sometimes, like, I'm fighting a cold. Because it's one of those jobs too. Like, you can't call in sick, and so it's important for me to stay healthy, but also, to get rest, but also to stay grounded. Every talk I give, I'm in the bathroom at the school or wherever I'm at before my talk, and I'm on my knees and I'm asking the Lord to anoint my lips, and I inhale Jesus and I exhale Christ, and I just tell him to use me as his imperfect instrument to, speak truth to the hearts, the minds, the souls, the spirits of these youth. It's the same prayer every time. And I feel that I am anointed, and I am just led sometimes to deliver this much needed message and, share this passion with all these youth.
No, I love that. That's incredible. So for you, when you're, just out of curiosity too, since you have this incredible packed schedule that you are managing well, what are your hours of sleep, and like, when do you typically like to go to sleep and wake up?
I just don't sleep. I just keep going, man. I just keep going. No, I'm joking. Every week's different too. And I'm getting better at the balance side of things. Believe me, I am. But it's one of those things, like, for example, I had a talk in Cleveland this past Tuesday. So I had to get up at like 4:30 and be out the door by 5, and then other days, I had my interview with you today at 11, and I got to sleep until like 8:30. So that was nice. But I am trying to take, like a down day after, and like making sure that if I just drove to and from Louisville or Gettysburg or wherever I'm speaking, that I'm not speaking the very next day back here in Michigan at 9 a.m., that I'm going to have that down day in between, speaking and doing this other thing. And obviously I still have my responsibilities at the church. Those are first and foremost. And so, I'm getting better at saying, okay, realistically, what can you do?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Can you technically speak till you fall over? Yeah. But then are you giving 100% of who you are? No. And whether I was doing that full time or not, you want to make sure that, what you're doing, that you're able to give 100% towards. And, that's where, I'm at right now is, I want to make sure that the passions that I have and the things that I'm doing, along with making my marriage a priority and spending time with my wife, Samantha, and, my own family and friends, and having that social life too, that I still have that balance and still have time to exercise and, watch my favorite TV show, which is The Good Doctor, Dr. Sean Murphy.
Show.
I love that show, man. And the beat at the beginning of the song, I get pumped up.
Yeah, because I was gonna ask you too, because obviously you still have a life and you enjoy that life. So just talk about, even with working as a youth pastor and doing the speaking tours. What are those things that you just enjoy doing outside of those things?
Yeah, one of my friends, maybe a few months back, this is before I even started my speaking tour for this year, he had said something to me. I just couldn't hit, like, our schedules, mainly mine, just wasn't syncing up, like we just couldn't hang out really. And, he had something that really he needed to talk about, like, in person. And once we finally did, I was really upset at myself, for not making that friendship a priority. But he said, and not trying to put me down at all, but he said, are you working to live, or are you living to work? And I really thought about that for a second, because I love, like I said before, I'm not any more alive than when I'm in front of a packed gymnasium, at a school, and ready to give all I can to these young people. But I was, living to work. And, I got to pay the bills and I got to support my family. And there's certain weeks that are crazier than others. And I just, bite the bullet and deal with it. Mm-hmm. But I'm trying to find more time, for me, whether that's playing basketball, which I love. And I'd love to go against the Soulet brothers one time, because I heard that they were really good back in high school there.
Oh, we can do that.
Kayaking, living off the canal there in Commerce Township. We love kayaking, walking the dogs, spending time with our fur babies, friends and family, just, being able to just kind of chill out and hang out, like on the deck, or have a good meal together, or, go for a long walk or a run. Even for me, like, creation is big, like I got to have time to create, whether that's poetry, music, a new album, books that I want to write. I got to also make time for that too, because I'll go crazy if I don't have that time or that outlet, So those are just things that kind of help me stay centered. Obviously, my faith too, and making God a priority, that I'm weekly honoring him and, continually every day, basically, reflecting on a Bible verse. I guess that's kind of my fly ritual in the morning is, staying centered around like a certain verse or two that kind of speaks to me and becomes my motivation for that day.
No, I love that. And I know that you'll be able to continue to do that, because even for me, earlier on, like, I would be I would be anxious if I wasn't working towards what I was doing. But like now, as I'm continuing to grow and finding those moments, like what you said, where you go do those other things to just like refresh and recharge, like playing basketball, going kayaking. Like for me, that's working out, doing my yoga, or going somewhere new to explore, and like doing photo shoots. It's just something that is still fun for me, that I can do with other people, but also has like those moments of like creation and also excitement and something novel. Whereas I will be like, I'll watch like The Good Doctor because I love that show, and like catch the Golden State game whenever they're playing. But like if I'm on the couch for too long or doing something where I'm not thinking as much, then my mind will literally start racing. I'm like, all right, I gotta do something. So even when
Yeah,
I'm not
sure.
doing these things, like you said, trying to make sure I'm still staying engaged and involved with, friends, family, and continuing to make those
Yeah.
memories as well. So I love that you shared that. And just
Amen.
before we wind up here, just want to take this
Yeah.
moment to honor you and thank you for everything that you've been doing and coming on here, sharing your journey and your story. I'm extremely grateful for that, for you taking the time out to spread the message and the love over here on Fulfilling Life's Yearnings. So just again, thanks for that.
Yeah.
And
You're
also,
welcome.
two final questions.
Yeah.
The first one is, where can we, stay engaged with you? I know you're like you said, you have new music coming out and
Yeah.
even books in the works for the future. How can we stay involved and engaged with what you have going on?
Yeah, for sure. Probably the best place to, stay in touch. And we're actually just about to relaunch my website, a little more mobile friendly version and a little more sleek too, probably by the end of this year. But mrpeace.org, mrpeace.org. All my social media is there, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Mr. Peace 101. And then I got Instagram, Mr. Peace Geese. And I always say, why geese? Why not? But, also if anybody feels called, to donate to the nonprofit, now everything's tax deductible. Any donation that will go to giving a school, an assembly free of charge to them or at a reduced rate. So that's where all the money's going for that, for the nonprofit now. So that's on there. But if you want to book, and bring like the healing message to your school, your community, to see videos, to check out, what I do live. There's a lot of that on the website as well, just to stay in touch. And, that's where any of the new projects will be released and things of that nature. I'm around, Southeast Michigan. So St. Mary's in Milford, that's where I'm the youth pastor at there. So any middle high school youth, young adults that want to be active, in their faith, or just, reach out to a group that's all about love and feeling safe, feel free to contact me there too. And before I leave, I did want to maybe just share a spoken word verse, if that works for you.
Absolutely.
That I think really ties into, what you're doing with this show and this podcast and, the life that you're living too, Blake. Before you blink, you're all grown up and life has passed you by because you weren't fully present, and then you wonder why. People are dying with the music still left inside and wishing they found their purpose at age 25 or 32 or in their 80s, really anytime, just so long as they found it before their last rites. I've had friends tell me, Peace, I need something besides the drugs. They want to get involved in serving others out of love. Then other buddies who have asked me for more volunteer opportunities so they can bring some more cheer. They want to give more than they have been, especially to kids living on the streets or in an orphanage. So do something major, minor, heck, do something drastic. Just do something, but please don't wreak no more havoc. And while you're at it, now that you are spiritually awoken, make sure to change those around you through every word that's spoken. Word.
Word. I love that. That was Mr. Peace. I'm Blake Soulet. This was Fulfilling Life's Yearnings. And Mr. Peace, that last question.
Yeah.
What is your definition of fulfilling life's yearnings?
I think just doing you. I think really, what this world needs are more people that have come alive. And I think what this world needs too is more people that are themselves. It's the age-old quote, be yourself because everyone else is taken. But yet we try so hard, to fit in or to be someone we're not, just to look cool or just to, not have to stand out or just because we're too afraid to. But it takes so much energy to be someone that you're not. And I think if we can be able to put down the mask, to get real with ourselves and who we want to be for this planet and what we really want to do, what brings us life, and take the step, move past the fear, feel it, but know our power over it. that we can really start making huge differences. Because I mean, that's what I'm trying to do, is helping others find their purpose. That's my purpose, one of my purposes, and I think yours too. And that's what it's about, is to fulfill life's yearnings, whether it happens at age 20 or 60 or 80 or 90. At least it happens, right? And we want it to hopefully happen sooner than later. But I think it just starts with having that courage to step into the unknown a little bit of the fear, but knowing that you get pushed to that edge and you aren't going to necessarily fail permanently. You might a couple of times, but you're going to eventually fly.
That's flies. So guys, thanks again for listening in. I'm Blake Soulet. That was Mr. Peace. Make sure you guys are going out there and breaking your chains, framing your mind, and getting out of your merry-go-round syndromes so that you can go out there and be fly. And as always, make sure to go to fulfillinglifeyearnings.com to see all the latest episodes we have come out. And also make sure to subscribe to the VIP newsletter so you guys can continue to stay engaged and continue to grow in just a place for me to be able to connect and share any sort of new thoughts I have, or even insights from these episodes that I'm having with these incredible fly guests. So as always, I love you guys. Go out there and be fly. Fly away.